We begin, though, this morning with breaking news.
A crucial trade route between the U.S. and Canada is open again after police broke up a week-long protest over vaccine mandates overnight. Demonstrators had blocked the Ambassador Bridge, which links Detroit to Windsor, impacting nearly $400 million of trade a day. While this particular path has been cleared, the protests again against COVID restrictions and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau continue elsewhere in Canada as well.
NBC News correspondent Cal Perry has been following this story from Windsor, Ontario. Hi, Cal. Good morning. Good to see you. So the last time that we did see you, you were in front of a bridge with gridlock traffic. What are you seeing this morning? What was it like over the weekend as well?
Yeah, so we're about a mile away from the bridge. You can see it behind me. And as you guys said, traffic is open for the first time in a week. I have to say it's a little surprising, too, after what we saw yesterday, which was this back and forth cat and mouse game. And those were the words of the police chief here, this cat and mouse game taking place between protesters and law enforcement. Really, it was a small number of protesters that were able to grind everything to a halt. And so what has happened now is the road behind me, which runs from the bridge to a major interstate that connects Canada, the police have basically made a corridor. They've put these cement barricades on all of the sort of intersections running east to west. So if you're a trucker, you get on the interstate, you come onto this road, and the next stop is to the U.S. That's what they've done to try to secure this roadway and keep it open. The mayor of the city saying that the national nightmare, the national economic nightmare is now over. Certainly that's the hope. It could be easy for protesters to come back on this road. That's why they've made the penalty 1 year in prison, a $100,000 fine. They're hoping that will serve as a deterrent, guys.
Absolutely. Now, Cal, so we know that the Ambassador Bridge is open, but as Yasmin just mentioned, the demonstrations are still ongoing elsewhere in Canada, in the capital, Ottawa. What's the latest there?
Yeah, Savannah, this weekend it kind of turned into a festival-like atmosphere in Ottawa. A lot of children came, families came, but the government is calling it a quote-unquote siege. You have basically protesters that have rung the parliament. They've taken fencing down on some of the memorials. The veterans came to take fencing down on the Veterans Memorial to make it more accessible, and it has caused a political crisis really in this country and a discussion about policing in Canada. And what we saw here this week is only adding to that discussion. Are there enough resources? Does the Canadian government have what it needs to clear out that park in Ottawa? It seems clear that so far they just don't have the resources necessary to get that cleared, guys.
All right, Cal Perry, thank you so much.
All right, I want to get to the crisis now in Ukraine and what could be a defining week. Germany's Chancellor is the latest leader to take a shot at diplomacy. He's in Kyiv to meet with Ukraine's President Zelensky before heading to Moscow on Tuesday for talks with Vladimir Putin. All of this after Ukraine requested a meeting with Russia within 48 hours to explain the buildup of troops on its border. And in Washington, officials sounding the alarm over a potential Russian invasion, with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan telling Face the Nation that it could be within days.
We have seen over the course of the past 10 days a dramatic acceleration in the buildup of Russian forces and the disposition of those forces in such a way that they could launch a military action essentially at any time. They could do so this coming week, but of course, it still awaits the go order. And so, therefore, we cannot predict the precise day or time that they may take action. We also are watching very carefully for the possibility that there is a pretext or a false flag operation to kick off the Russian action.
All right, let's get into this. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin joins us from Kyiv this morning, and our White House correspondent Josh Letterman is in Washington. Good morning to you both. Aaron, let me start with you on this one. So the latest warning there from the United States, as we just heard, Russia calling it, though, quote-unquote, hysteria. Ukraine's president saying he has seen no proof of plans to attack imminently. What does Ukraine make of the warnings right now from the White House?
Well, we heard from President Zelensky on Saturday say that the Ukrainian intelligence is different, saying that his priority at this point is to stop people from panicking, to maintain a sense of calm here in Ukraine. And to that effect, during the course of the phone conversation he had with President Biden last night, according to the Ukrainian government readout of that call, he thanked the president for his ongoing support, also inviting the president to visit Kyiv, saying that that would go a long way to de-escalate the situation situation. Now, of course, a visit from President Biden seems unlikely at this point, given that the United States is in the process of withdrawing the majority of its diplomatic staff from its embassy here, along with a whole host of other countries. That, in combination with KLM, a major Dutch airliner, over the weekend announcing that it was suspending flights. Fitch this morning announcing that it was downgrading the outlook for Ukrainian state banks from positive to stable, all lending to this idea among Ukrainians I've been speaking to that they feel like they're the ones being sanctioned right now, that they're paying the highest price. That being said, walking around here, Kyiv, over the weekend and this morning, it seems to be pretty much business as usual. Ukrainians I'm talking to say that they are going about their daily lives while also preparing for the worst. We've spoken to several Ukrainians who say they have moved their children out of Kyiv into the western portion of the country that's seen as safer, but they plan to remain and defend their country in the event of a potential invasion. Yasmin.
Josh, let's talk about the phone calls over the weekend. Biden speaking with both Putin and Zelensky. What do we know?
Well, the president spoke with President Putin for more than an hour on Saturday while he was at Camp David. But there are no signs that that phone conversation led to the type of de-escalation, Yasmin, that the United States and its NATO allies have been seeking, with the White House saying after that call that it was professional and substantive, but there was no fundamental change to the underlying dynamic that has characterized this conflict for the last many weeks. And the U.S. coming out of that call with President Putin saying that a military invasion by Russia could still happen at any time, that they are hoping that President Putin would take into account some of what he heard from President Biden, but officials being very candid about the fact that Russia may go ahead and invade anyway. There was also this conversation, a little bit shorter, that the president had with his Ukrainian counterpart, President Zelensky, yesterday, lasting about 50 minutes, where the president was able to fill in the Ukrainian president on what happened in that call with President Putin. Aaron mentioning the fact that he invited President Biden to come to Kyiv, but the White House also saying that in this call with Zelensky, the two agreed that they would respond swiftly and decisively to any Russian aggression. Now, the president this morning will be returning from Camp David, where he had both of those calls over the weekend. By all signs, the president will be focusing on this crisis as we enter the week. He currently has nothing on his schedule other than his classified intelligence briefing today, Yasmin.
Aaron, let's talk diplomacy here for a moment. We know Macron tried his hand at diplomacy last week. That didn't necessarily work. Germany's Chancellor now trying his hand, meeting with Zelensky today, Putin tomorrow. He is new to the job, as we all know, and has been resistant to fully call out Moscow because of their oil dependency on the pipeline. What are the hopes that he can actually get something done?
You know, I think at this point, no one here is hopeful of a miracle, some sort of signed, sealed agreement that Russia will de-escalate the situation out of these meetings that he has, given the little progress that we've seen so far from the French president, as well as the president of the United States. So I don't think anybody's expecting an explicit agreement out of this round of diplomacy. There is hope, though, to keep the talks going, to keep the diplomatic channels open. I think speaking to people here in the European Union, that is sort of the hope at this point. That being said, when the German Chancellor comes here and arrives here in Kyiv and meets with President Zelensky, they have much to discuss. Ukrainian government officials have been very critical of Germany's response, specifically to the fact that they have declined to send lethal aid to Ukraine. German officials would make the point, though, that they've never sent lethal aid to Ukraine. Also, the topic of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, of course, will be most likely discussed in today's meetings. There's a press conference scheduled for later today. We can expect the German Chancellor to be pressed on those points as well.
Josh, finally to you on this one. We know over the weekend the U.S. ordered the evacuation of the embassy there while American forces are arriving in Poland at this point. What is their main mission?
Well, their main mission is to make NATO allies feel better about what's taking place in the border with Ukraine, a non-NATO country, although officials have also said those troops in Poland could help with Americans if they evacuate from Ukraine and enter Poland to then be processed, go through medical checks to be evacuated out of the region. Here's Pentagon spokesman John Kirby over the weekend explaining what those troops will do.
We did add just 3,000 to the remainder of the 82nd Airborne. We remember we had already deployed about 1,700 to Poland, so now 3,000 more of that airborne element will be going. They'll be going to deter any Russian aggression against Poland. They'll be going to reassure our Polish allies as well as NATO's eastern flank. And it remains an open question whether or not there'll be additional forces that need to either move inside Europe to the eastern flank or from the United States.
What they won't be doing, Yasmin, is going into Ukraine to fight Russian troops. The U.S. has made clear it does not want to get into that kind of situation. It will also not be sending in thousands of troops to evacuate Americans who decide to stay behind in Ukraine. The U.S. over the weekend repeating that message to American citizens in Ukraine to get out now on the next flight while there are still flights out of the country.
Yeah, reminding folks, the president saying in his interview with Lester Holt, we will not go to war over Ukraine. Aaron, Josh, thank you both so much. Appreciate it. All right, so here in the United States, more states are choosing to drop their mask mandates, while parents now have to wait even longer to get those young kids vaccinated against COVID. In the 10 states that you see here, masks are no longer required to go inside businesses, but they're still needed for public transportation. While that may sound like we're making some progress against this pandemic, we do have a setback in the vaccine world. Pfizer has now delayed its request for the FDA to authorize the COVID vaccine for children under 5. They say they're now waiting for more data on the effectiveness of a third dose for that age group. And that data may not be available until early April, moving the goalpost again for so many parents, myself included. Here to help us understand the latest in the pandemic is NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel. Dr. Patel, thanks for joining us on this. We appreciate it. The FDA urging Pfizer to apply for an EUA with data from a 2-dose regimen. At the last second, Pfizer delayed its application, saying they needed data from a third dose. What went wrong here, and how confident are you the same things will not happen come April?
Yeah, this was disappointment heard all around the country with millions of parents who were waiting, like you, for vaccines and had our hopes kind of, promised and then dashed. Couple of things. We still don't understand what the underlying data was that convinced the FDA to put a pause on this. And obviously, that would be nice to know. But you can imagine, just given what has happened with so many pediatric cases of Omicron, especially in the last 4 weeks, you can imagine those first 2 doses just didn't hold up, and that you really do need that third dose in order to get that ever desired effectiveness that we're seeking, effectiveness against hospitalizations, against disease. That's what you kind of read between the lines, but we just don't know, and it's too soon to tell. What this means for shifting the goalpost, you're right. April is their final kind of quote package data due date. But if the data keeps rolling in, which it will, and there is compelling data on that third dose, then we could see action taken a little earlier. And the FDA did say that they were going to make sure that they did this in a speedy manner. So one would hope, but this sets us back weeks. And every week is precious as people have been holding kids out of daycare, keeping them out of schools, and trying to have a normal life in the meantime.
So, hey, Dr. Patel, it's Savannah. So I'm wondering here something kind of about vaccine hesitancy and parents and kids, because we know that the rate for children that are already eligible for the vaccine is pretty low. And we saw some stats that parents of kids under 5, there's not a lot of interest at this point in getting that shot for kids. Then we all get this push notification on our phone that Pfizer's pulling that application. What do you want parents to know who are just sort of confused by all this? They're like, I wasn't really sure I wanted to get it in the first place. Now I heard they were applying for that, and now all of a sudden they're pulling the application. If a parent's worried, what would you say to them?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Pfizer didn't really pull or withdraw its application saying we give up. It was a pause. So this is still a rolling submission that Pfizer will submit data on working with the agency. Second, we have data on the 5 to 11 group that this has been helping them, early data that shows that it has been helping in preventing some of those bad effects from you can get Omicron, but you don't get really sick from it. That's very early data that I think will just continue to be reinforced as time goes on. Third, safety. I think the most common concern about vaccines that I've encountered with parents is safety. We have not seen any significant safety signals in the 5 and up, and reassuredly, Pfizer did put out a statement back in December that their 6-month to 24 and even to their 4-year-old, basically under 5, it's been demonstrated to be safe. It's really about that effectiveness, and getting it right with 3 doses is what I think will happen, but we need to see.
Such an important distinction there, Dr. Patel. We appreciate you bringing that up, really talking about the efficacy here, the best way to be effective with young children versus the safety, because it's not about safety.
Yep.
They know the vaccine is safe. Dr. Kavita Patel, we thank you. And if you have a question, by the way, for one of our doctors, let us know. Email us at morningnewsnow@nbcuni.com with your questions. You can also let us know if you want to stay anonymous.
Now, in Los Angeles, it was all champagne and confetti last night as the Rams beat the Cincinnati Bengals to win the Super Bowl in front of their home crowd. It was the Rams' second championship, but its first since moving to L.A., capping off a thrilling season for the NFL. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joins us now from Los Angeles, up super early for us there. Hey, Shaq, good morning. So this was, even for not very sporty person, as I admit quite frequently on this show, an exciting NFL season. I mean, many of those playoff games, it was incredible. Did this finale live up to the hype?
No, that's a great point, Savannah, because so many of these games during the playoffs have come down to those final few seconds, and this was no exception. It was a game of twists and turns, lots of dramatic shifts in momentum, especially when the Cincinnati Bengals were able to capture that halftime lead that the Rams went into halftime with. You know, one thing that we saw was that final drive in the fourth quarter that really locked in this Rams lead. It came down to the MVP, Cooper Kupp, who was able to get that touchdown in the end zone there. And, you know, one thing that we're also seeing is that fans here in L.A. really were looking for this. This is what they were waiting for, and this is what they were watching for. And for many of them, they said it simply didn't disappoint.
Yeah, Shaq, I know you watched the game with some Rams fans there in L.A., which sounds like a blast. What do they have to say about the victory and what it means for the city, especially for them having just moved there?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the biggest moment, of course, was that final drive. But I'll tell you, most of the people there really got excited with that halftime performance. I can't let this go without talking about that halftime show. Hip-hop greats, I hear you, Joe. The hip-hop greats really stealing the show. And that was when you heard the crowd really wake up and start paying attention to what was happening. But, of course, they were celebrating the win that they got in their home city. Listen to what they told me after that victory.
How does it feel? Oh, my God, we love L.A. We're so happy. Go L.A. What does this mean for the city? Oh, my God, so much. We have so much potential, so much to do. Okay, L.A., get it together. We got so much to do. We're the champions. Did you expect that win? Did you expect the win to happen tonight? I expected that win. I thought that we wasn't going to win, but we won. It's L.A., baby. L.A. Rams, baby. Yeah. The fact that this was a home, the fact that this is home, it was at SoFi right down the street. Does it make it even more special? It feels so surreal. I'm so proud of my city. I'm so proud of our team. Good job, Rams. Good job, Rams.
Savannah, in the moments after that interview, the fans there, they played "We Are the Champions" probably 5 consecutive times. They were excited. They were really having a good time. And look, they deserve it after that game that we saw.
Yeah, all right. And Shaq, if that was your night, we are doubly grateful that you're up and with us right now at 4:30 in the morning in LA. Thank you so much. Looks like fun.
You got it.
Now let's get a check on your Morning News Now weather. Bill Cairns is with us. Hey, Bill.
So impressive. It doesn't even look tired. Like the rest of us are like, we were up late watching the game.
I wasn't, by the way. I went to bed at 9 and then got the alert. After halftime, I went to sleep.
I had people at mine, so it was hard to be like, you know what, leave, even though we've got this final drive. Could you imagine I kicked him out right before they did that drive?
That was great. So let me get to your Monday forecast. And also, he's wearing a jacket still, and it's still like in the 60s in L.A. While the rest of us are like still stuck in winter. It was a pretty wild weekend in the Northeast and in the Great Lakes. We went from really warm Saturday to we had the snow on Sunday. We had a couple accidents. We had some problems in Michigan, especially with some snow that came down around Detroit and through southern Michigan. That's where the roads got very slippery in a hurry. It wasn't a lot of snow, but it was just enough to cause a pretty big backup. And if you've ever been in the snow and stuck on roads like this, that's not a fun scenario for anyone. So today, it's a little bit better. The only snowy areas are really from Boston down to the Cape. That's where we do still have a little bit of light snow coming down. That's the blue on the map. There's also some flurries out there in Maryland and near Pittsburgh. But the bigger story is just the cold. It's just, there's not many mornings left like this, thankfully. As we go through February, we really start to warm things up. But look at International Falls and Fargo. Wind chill is -25. Northern Vermont and northern Maine, -12, -17. New York's at 5, Pittsburgh 1, Chicago 6. So this is a true Arctic air mass. All the warmth that's been in the west, though, is going to start heading east, and that's going to warm everybody up. So L.A. 75 today, Oklahoma City 68 degrees. And as I mentioned, as we head towards tomorrow, that warm air starts to spread to the east, and eventually it'll make it to the East Coast by the end of this week. So for today, guys, this one's for you. Pick your favorite Valentine's Day city on here. One of my favorites, Sweetheart City, Wisconsin is a good one. Darling, Arizona. I mean, you can pick any of these for your Valentine.
Sweetheart, Wisconsin. That's pretty cute. I got to say, I was very jealous, Bill Cairns, of watching The Rock last night with his short sleeves on while we are sitting
his
here.
Short sleeves that must have been a custom shirt, by the way.
Oh, for sure.
It was like
with those biceps
away by that. Yeah.
Someone tweeted that he seemed bigger than the players with pads on.
Yes, it was crazy.
He is just so huge.
Great outfit, though. Great outfit. I love a color block.
Popping. It was like 3D biceps.
Yes. Exactly. I feel like you could hang on one of them.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you, Bill. Good to see you.
Thanks, Bill. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.